The Hills of Tanchico, the featured song in The Wheel of Time Season 3, Episode 6. It has been an honor and a privilege, one of the greatest honors of my life, to be able to write a song to try to contribute to Robert Jordan's wonderful Wheel of Time universe. When the song got released in Episode 6, I was beyond thrilled to see the fan reaction because I'm a fellow fan of the books, I read all 15 books before I started working on the show. And it means the world to me that fans feel it did justice to the spirit of those books. Because what I love about Robert Jordan's writing is that he balances the darkness and light very well. Now, with the Wheel of Time show, it leans more into the dark, gritty aspects of things. People have been very influenced by Game of Thrones. They want their own Game of Thrones. They're Game of Thronesifying things a little bit. One thing I really appreciated about Robert Jordan's world is that he would have dark scenes, but then he would have these bawdy songs in the bars and stuff like that. So I wanted to try to work on something that would represent that, hopefully as faithful to the spirit of those books as possible. Now, a quick breakdown. Once I got the lyrics from Rammy Park, she had written the episode 6 and she had written the wonderful lyrics for The Hills of Tanchico. I only got a couple notes from production. I was told, we want this to sound like a sea shanty. This is a big moment for Elaine. It was kind of scripted out how it would be, how the song would progress, and Elaine would start off hesitant. She would realize the joke of The Hills of Tanchico, lean into the joke midway through. That structure was there in terms of what production wanted. They also mentioned they wanted it to feel like a sea shanty bar song, but also have Asian and African instrumentation. Now, the trick here was I only had the morning to write it. Yes, only the morning. I would say 95% of everything you hear in the final recording was actually done here in this room in that demo. So I wanted to kind of break this down for you all because I figured the best way to show you what goes into making a song like this and trying to represent Robert Jordan's world is to kind of break down the song layer by layer, piece by piece, and show you how I put it all together. Now, before I get started and kind of show you my session and just exactly how I created it, I wanted to talk a little bit about the context of the song. Now, The Hills of Tanchico, of course, has the double entendre. That means that it's kind of the hills of Tanchico, right? Is it about the geographical location or maybe about breasts? There was the joke aspect to that song. Of course, there's also lyrics like "one's not enough, three's too many to bring a man to his knees." Now, this references the shackled man that was talked about by Leandrin in that same episode in episode 6, and basically about this male channeler who gets collared by the female channelers. There is a theme of kind of subjugation and control and enslavement. It's a very dark connotation, but imagine a song that was written thousands of years ago. If it was distorted through time, what would it sound like now? Maybe it becomes a peppy, upbeat song, but the lyrics still have these melancholy connotations. So I wanted to try to represent that in the song actually as well. So if you listen to The Hills of Tanchico, when it first starts, it's just really an acoustic guitar, right? And vocal. And it is in a minor key. It kind of sounds almost like a lament, It sounds almost like a melancholic feel to the song. And then, of course, the chorus, "The Hills of Tanchico," right? It's got this huge, epic kind of heroic sound to it. And the idea was to lean away from the joke rather than toward the joke, because if you try to make it a joke song, then it would kind of not really be a sing-along, which I really wanted it to be something that's hummable. And I wanted it to be something that feels like it was passed down through the ages. What would happen in terms of the distortion of meanings of songs as it's passed down through ages? Think about like Ring Around the Rosie, right? When, that was written during the Black Death period. And now it has become a children's nursery rhyme, right? And it sounds kind of like a peppy thing. Maybe in the 1300s when it was first written, it sounded more like a lament. This is all that was going through my mind. So I wanted to represent that. I also knew that the script had mentioned Elaine starts off hesitant, and then she becomes more confident as the song goes. So I wanted to also make sure that this is a big character moment for her. The best way to do that is to juxtaposition it by having less instrumentation at the beginning, and then kind of building it up into this heroic chorus. And it's funnier, I think, when it sounds almost heroic, but then it's a song about breasts in the context of the scene, right? So there's a little bit of a fun atmosphere to it. There's also this kind of timeless legend quality and even a melancholic feel. So trying to combine all these things in a morning is very difficult to do, but luckily I had the gift of not enough time. And I'll tell you, when you're inspired and you don't have enough time, sometimes it helps you not overthink anything. So that's kind of the impetus. I'm going to pick up my guitar now and just show you what the original version of the Hills of Tanchico, when I first started trying to play with the cadences of Rammy Park's lyrics, how that all came about. This is a beautiful Martin acoustic guitar. I love this thing because it just sounds compressed as you record it. You probably won't hear it the best with this mic, but I'm going to just kind of show you how I did it. Scripts showed Tom Maryland warming up, so I just decided to do an A minor chord. Not to click or anything, just how somebody would do if they were just kind of, picking up the guitar, strumming a chord, and then getting ready to play, and then Kira comes in, right? So the way I decided to do it, and this is a little bit different to how it ended up being in the final track, I was thinking about the words, I'll tell you a tale of a lad of 20, terrabund boy with coin aplenty, right? So it's got this cadence to it, a rhythm already. And so I thought, okay, what would it sound like a lament, right? I'll tell you a tale of a lad of 20, a terrabund boy with coin aplenty. And when looking for love and more's the pity, when he's lost in the hills of Tanchico City. Right? And then it goes, well, one's not enough, and three's too many, and two bring a man to his knees. Hey, the hills of Tanchico, the hills of Tanchico, hey. Right? So you kind of almost have this folksy song, it could belong in a 60s folk band, and also it could be like a bar song. So that was kind of the idea, but then of course, distorted through time, it's going to become more of a peppy song. So let's now take a look at the session, and I'm going to show you exactly how I played this. Okay, so here I have pulled up my Hills of Tanchico session, which I apologize, it's so messy right now. I'm kind of diving into this for the first time since I recorded this now 2 years ago. Can you believe it? And so, when you're working in TV deadlines, things have to move really fast. This whole track I wrote in a morning. So I had to kind of figure out ways of combining Asian instrumentation, African instrumentation, make a melody, hopefully that would stick with the lyrics. And then, of course, try to produce the whole track and get it ready for approval so we could get it to the vocalists, have them look it over, and then record it the following week. So pretty fast movement here. So let's just kind of break down what this track sounds like. I'm going to play a little bit of the track just so you can hear it. This is the unmixed version. This is my produced version. You can see how close it is to the final product.
When looking for love and more's a pity, now he's lost in the hills of Tanchico City.
So that gives you an idea of, kind of what the full track sounds like, right? What I submitted to production, what we ended up recording. You heard there Kira Coveney's amazing vocals. So let's take a look at this, section by section. So, as I mentioned, I wanted to create something that felt like a sea shanty. This is a confluence of cultures. That's what Robert Jordan did so well, is he would combine different cultures together in a way where you didn't know where one ended and where the other began. I think about the Shan civilization and how they had Asian influences, but then they would have like a Texas drawl, right? It seems almost disparate that they're putting these, that Robert Jordan put these kinds of confluences together, but they work because you don't really know where one ends and when one begins. So the idea here was, hey, we're going to have the sea shanty being the main crux of the song. It could be sung in a bar. It's like a sing-along. But at the same time, you have these other instrumentation that are unconventional and kind of help support the structure. So let's go through this one by one. So I have my plucked instruments here. I recorded acoustic guitar and bass here in my home studio. So I'll just play those for you right now. So pretty standard stuff, right? It sounds kind of like what you would expect maybe in a bar song. And the electric bass doesn't really belong, but it fills it out, right? And it's kind of one of those things where your ear's not really thinking about it. It's buried a little bit in the mix. Let's take a look at the mandolin with this now. So we have a little bit of mandolin texture there, but again, buried in the mix. Now, we had also an oud, which is a Middle Eastern plucked instrument. Check this out. So that gives it another flavor. But again, these are different plucked instruments that are kind of going together, right? So you don't know where one ends, where one begins. So that was kind of the idea of this. And then I also had a guzheng, which is like it's not as much plucked, but it kind of went in this instrument group the way I mixed them. So this is a kind of a Chinese hammered dulcimer. Now let's take a look at what that sounds like with this. So kind of cool textures there, right? And they all fill out different frequency banks, so you kind of get a nice full spectrum of a sound, which is really fun. Let's take a look at some of the percussion. So this was the stomps and stick hits right here. Oh, that has our claps. I wanted it to be pounding, you know. Then we add in some claps, which is basically me clapping a bunch of times in the studio at different mic positions to make it sound like it's different people. And then I added some clap samples as well to fill out the sound. So let's just listen to my claps here. Now let's add in the samples. Now you notice how in this the claps sound a little off time, and that's kind of what I wanted to do deliberately because it should feel like a bar. It shouldn't be too clean, right? Then you add some shakers and tambourine. Then it was time to bring in some toms for some mid kind of percussion, and then also some West African kind of instruments as well. We had a dundun, we had a kakelambe, we had daburka, which is kind of a Middle Eastern drum. Check these out with this. Completely different sound, right? It almost sounds tribal. At the same time, it works in a bar song. So that was the idea here. Let's add in some string longs. So this, I'm going to actually solo these so you can hear what they sound like. Very sampley, but in the mix, it works. So this is a combination of like a solo violin sample library, which was the aflatus strings sample library right here. And then it was also a zhangu, which is a Mongolian stringed instrument. So again, don't want to be able to delineate which is which. That's the idea. Then we had some kind of string shorts and textural stuff, which check this out. Gonna play these. Cool, right? Gives it a little bit of a percussive feel, but still is strings related. So let's add in some of the accordion, hurdy-gurdy, and kalimbas now, and just kind of hear what those sounds like. There's also a Laotian instrument right here. Cool. So now let's take a look at what my vocals sounded like when I first sent them what I wanted the melody to sound like. Now you'll hear that a lot of these harmonies actually weren't used in the final recording because it should feel like a bar, and it would be weird if everybody suddenly started breaking out into harmony, right? So this is just my vocal, so you can kind of get an idea on what that sounded like. It's always funny to listen back on a rough demo. That is just for demo purposes, but I will give it to you so you could hear it.
A man to his knees. Hey, the hills of Tanchico. Hey, the hills of Tanchico. Hey, these hills will flatten a whole ship's crew. These hills will make a man out of you. The hills of Tanchico. Hey, the hills of Tanchico. Hey.
So you'll notice it has quite a bit of distortion on it. And I did that on purpose because it kind of sounds like it's got a bit more of a rocking vibe, you know? It just feels a little bit more spirited. But you'll hear that the vocals I'm going to solo now, which is Ciara Coveney, Donald Finn, and Alexander Willem, who are incredible singers, incredible talents. And I want to show you how their voices blend together. So I'm gonna show you this real quick here. Here we go. So I'm going to just show these vocals here.
And three's too many, and two bring a man to his knees. Hey, the hills of Tanchico, the hills of Tanchico, hey!
Now, Ciara's voice is amazing, and I wanted to make sure that I added a little bit of compression to it and a little bit of tape saturation. I'm going to show you how her vocals sounded without these and without the EQ that I added onto it, which kind of filters out some of the unwanted frequencies and lets her voice shine. So let's just take a look at that without these processings. How about that? All right, let's take these off.
Was a pity. Now he's lost in the hills of Tanchico City.
And you can hear her stomping in the background of the music. So I wanted to filter out some of those from the vocal recording, which is why I had this low, high pass filter here. So let's take a look with adding some of these back in now so you could hear it. So I'm going to add in the compression first.
Well, one's not enough and three's too many.
You see how it just brings out the brightness in her vocals?
And two bring a man to his
Now comes the tape.
knees. Hey, the hills of Tanchico.
Still could use a little work on the EQ. So now let's just listen, and I'm going to turn on the EQ.
Hey, the hills of Tanchico. The hills of Tanchico. Hey.
Cool, right? Now here comes Donald's voice.
These hills will flatten a whole ship's crew.
And Alexander.
These hills will make a man out of you. The hills of Tanchico. The hills of Tanchico. Hey!
Incredible vocals because, Ciara has a sweeter voice. Donald has this kind of musical theater projecting voice, and Alexander has that gravelly voice. So let's just take a look at just each one. You've heard Ciara's already. Let's listen to Donald's real quick.
Will make a man out of you. The hills of Tanchico. The hills of Tanchico. Hey!
Incredible, right? Just nice projecting voice. Now let's listen to Alexander Willems, who plays Tom Maryland here.
Will make a man out of you. The hills of Tanchico. The hills of Tanchico. Hey!
So again, the importance also is it sounds like a bar song, right? You don't want to like pitch correct this stuff way too much because then it starts to sound unrealistic. So let's listen again to all three.
Tanchico, the hills of Tanchico. Hey!
Awesome, right? And now let's take a look again at the whole track all together.
Too many, and to bring a man to his steez. Hey, the hills of Tanchico. The hills of Tanchico. Hey!
And to illustrate this point one more time, I'm going to just solo individual groups and bring them into the full mix so you could hear all the parts as they come together. Now, for the soundtrack album, we ended up extending this so that it could be a 2 minute and 15-second song. So that's kind of how this whole thing worked. So I hope you enjoyed this Hills of Tanchico breakdown.